Greetings. So today we're going to learn a little bit about the Natchez Trace, which is a very historic location in the southeast, what was considered to be part of the old American Southwest, if you will. And after the Revolutionary War period and the early 1800s, um, confrontation started brewing again with the British, and this led to the War of 1812, and as you'll see, the Natchez Trace played a most profound and pivotal role in this war, and in fact, in the end of the war as well. So the Natchez Trace is a location that spans between um, the states of Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, and it goes pretty much from Nashville down to Natchez, Mississippi, not far from New Orleans. And this location, this is 444-mile stretch of natural corridor, this natural terrain. It's literally a natural path. Has been a profound and pivotal location for travel for people for as many have stated up to about 10,000 years or so. And so um, the Natchez Trace and its importance to American history is most profound. It cannot be understated, especially since it has touched for so many eons and years. As you can see here, the route of the Natchez Trace goes as from the middle map from Nashville down to, or from Nashville down to Natchez, Mississippi, and it has become a national park. It's part of the National Park Service of America under the Department of Interior, and this literally has encampments going back some 10,000 years. It is a very historic location. Many people travel there every year through the different periods, whether it be in the fall time with the colors, such as now, or in the spring and summer where there's a lot of activities and a lot of these old towns are opened up to anybody who wants to come and check out this historic natural corridor. So the Natchez Trace has been home to an incredible many different cultures and tribes, civilizations, if you will, going back 10,000 years. One of which is in the more modern time was the Choctaw Indians. And this group of Native Americans that resided in the Alabama area, um, they were uh, they were one of the more friendly groups of individuals, of tribes to the Western European and American colonization ambitions. And so this group of Native Americans were, for the most part, very hospitable to Europeans and to Americans, especially as the War of 1812 drew closer. And we will go into a little bit more about them and their leaders and their most profound contribution and impact to the War of 1812, and in fact, leading to and contributing to General Andrew Jackson's victory at the Battle of New Orleans. So, two Native Americans and two different Native American paths leading into the War of 1812 is that of the Choctaw chief Pushamata and the Shawnee war chief Tecumseh. Now, these two were from different tribes, but they were somewhat co-located within close proximity, and they did have a history. Their tribes had a great deal of history. Yet, these two different individuals, as you can tell from the pictures, they had diverging stories before, life stories and ancestral stories leading up to this point, which led them to differing roads of decision making and actions regarding um, their role in the War of 1812 and the events transpiring up to that. And so on the left, you have the Choctaw chief Pushumuta Mata, and he was a uncle of a niece to a French American who married his niece and led his people in a dispute or more of a refusal to join Takemusa and his Shawnee um, tribe against the Native American expansion. Tecumseh, on the other hand, he was adamant at not allowing any other Americans to encroach upon their lands and to colonize it. And so he decided after the War of 1812 had commenced that he wanted to wage war against the Americans. And so they actually reached out to the British somewhat and formed somewhat of a loose alliance with the British and began waging war against the American forces. Pashamuta and the Choctaw decided to enter the war. At first, they wanted to be neutral, but they decided to enter the war on behalf of the United States and became full-fledged American United States soldiers, Army soldiers, which is why you see a picture of him in an Army uniform. And so they played a pivotal role going forward in defeating Tecumseh as well as the ongoing further major campaigns, battles, leading to the Battle of New Orleans. So the War of 1812 began in on June 18th, 1812, after the British had, for pretty much 5+ years, they had been waging somewhat of a hostile, aggressive action against the young American nation. And one of the things that they were doing is that they were supporting Tecumseh's Confederacy of Indians in a guerrilla style war against the United States and to preventing the United States from expanding into new territories and getting larger. And one of the main reasons for this was obviously the British wanted to maintain the United States as a weak nation, and they also wanted to acquire the rare goods and resources from these territories by making alliances with Tecumseh's Confederacy, if you will. And so this war culminated because the British were supporting Tecumseh's Confederacy in their attacks against the Americans and the frontier expansions, but also because the Royal Navy was violating American territorial waters as well as basically taking American sailors from ships and forcing them into servitude. Even though they have become American citizens. And so this hostility grew until finally it kind of erupted into to war. As I spoke about previously, so the British Royal Navy was encroaching upon American naval ships, and they were punishing them as well as taking American sailors and forcing them into various different servitude as well as punishment. This had a great effect on American trade, especially with France, and its ability to export and send shipments of trade, cotton, potatoes, things of that nature. And so finally, this culminated in some of the earliest sea battles of that war. So the War of 1812 began with the British Royal Navy um, in their impressment of American sailors by the British Navy, and it culminated into massive land battles, primarily because the British had supported and backed Tecumseh's Confederacy against the American expansion. And so this led to American forces going south, more south into the new Southwest, if you will, or the Southeast today, um, and massive battles leading to battles within the Natchez Trace that we will soon go into. Um, and so, in even so, there were some battles in the north, even up into the New York area, but primarily of some of the major battles were in the south. And even Washington, D.C. itself was taken in 1814, and the Capitol was burned. The president had to flee, and the Capitol was burned, or the White House was burned. And Andrew Jackson, one of the generals at the time, he enacted an intense campaign um, going forward. So American forces, to include General Andrew Jackson, began pushing south in their campaigns against the British as well as Tecumseh's Confederacy of Indians. And this led to some of the larger battles that we'll cover in a minute. So in 1813, on October 11th, Andrew Jackson's men marched from Tennessee and camped en route to the Mississippi Territory, which is now today central Alabama, to where the Battle of Horseshoe Bend would be fought. Um, this massive battle would be a decisive victory for Andrew Jackson going forward in the American forces against the British. As you will see, this is what led to the defeat of um, Tecumseh and his Confederate forces. So after an intensive bit of battling between 1813 into the early part of 1814, um, between Pensacola, Florida, and through the south of Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi, finally the Battle of Horseshoe Bend took place near Dadeville, Alabama, in which the American forces under General Andrew Jackson, were able to defeat Tecumseh and his Confederacy of Native American Red Sticks, who had allied themselves with the British. This was a profoundly decisive victory for the American forces and Andrew Jackson, and it led to the Treaty of Fort Jackson, which is also by which we made a base called Fort Jackson, where I went to basic training and joined the Army chaplaincy at. And so this decisive victory saw Tecumseh defeated and his Confederacy having to sign this treaty and cede a profound bit of land to the United States. After the victory of American forces under General Jackson at Horseshoe Bend, several more battles were fought, leading to the Battle of New Orleans, in which the Choctaw Native Americans played a profound and decisive role in aiding General Jackson in his victory over the British. It was then that helping Jackson utilize the Natchez Trace and its strategic position in order to thwart the British movement. The British didn't fully understand and know the terrain, and the Choctaw were able to aid Jackson in being able to decisively defeat them, not just defeat them, but themselves maneuver into position in order to essentially take out large portions of their forces in this land battle, resulting in Jackson's win in the early part of January of 1815. So President Jackson leading the American forces um, against the British Army under Major General Sir Edward Pakenham led the American forces to topple Pakenham's forces, leading to the greatest American victory, land battle victory in the War of 1812, and essentially culminating in the end of the war. It was the last major battle. And this is what prompted the British to essentially eventually sue for peace and what helped to lead President and General Andrew Jackson to the presidency years later. After Andrew Jackson became president, he quickly began his policies, one of which was to go after the bank charter, or the central bank at the time. And not long into his presidency, a gentleman by the name of Richard Lawrence was where became the first person to attempt an assassination on an American president. And this, in fact, happened. Um, and in the process, Larson was he had two pistols, and they both seemed to freeze up. And President Jackson, as ornery as he was, Old Hickory, proceeded to beat this man with his own cane having to be pulled off by a member of Congress. Um, and that resulted in a more hardened President Andrew Jackson going forward. One of which policies, unfortunately, from Andrew Jackson's being very tenacious and undeterred in his policies, would be more of the extreme within Congress and his policies to rid the American frontier, the American lands newly acquired, of Native Americans. And so he would sign what would become the um, the act to remove Native American Indians from American lands east of the Mississippi and send them west. This signing of the Indian Removal Act by President Jackson, unfortunately, had an effect or an impact upon the Choctaws as well. What's sad about this and tragic about this is that Choctaw themselves, allied, became American soldiers and fought in the War of 1812 with Jackson. In fact, Jackson, after the war, he was shot in a duel, and it was the Choctaw who actually saved his life at the time. And anybody you get shot in the arm or leg or whatever. Often the procedure, the policy was to just chop some or to saw somebody's arm or leg off. Instead, he went to the Native Americans whom he knew, who he befriended and became friends with and fought with, and the Choctaw saved him. And um, so, unfortunately, the very people that had helped him multiple times, even personally, he even sent them west of the Mississippi on the Trail of Tears. Sadly, with the signing of the Indian Removal Act, many Native Americans, to include the Choctaw, were removed from their historic lands, their ancient historic lands. And many of them, in fact, would travel and traverse through the Natchez Trace. And it would be one of the last uh, uh, times that they would touch foot to ground on their native lands in their a natural corridor that went back 10,000 years before they would hit the major routes traveling 800 miles west of the Mississippi into Oklahoma and such. Finally, to end this lecture, the Natchez Trace today has become a very historic route for people to visit. You can go to the trail and you can actually stay along. They've made a highway. It's called the Natchez Parkway, and there's an immense amount of activities you can do, and a lot of American history that you can see. Sadly, it has a lot of hurtful history, but it has a lot of American history pre-United States, going back well before the United States, 10,000 years, as well as a lot of American history in the development of what we became as the United States today. And it continues to play a very important route for many people who still travel it and visit. And you can see a lot of these places that Andrew Jackson and many others traversed. And it is a very important location in American history in the Old Southwest.